August 6, 1945, the day that changed the world forever. A single bomb erased an entire city. Over 70,000 people died in seconds. The sky turned into fire. But in the buried ashes of Hiroshima, there was a man. The man you've never heard of. The man who walked through fire and survived not one but two nuclear bombs and walked out of this terror. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi, and this is the story of the most radioactive man in the history. Before Yamaguchi became a symbol of survival, he was just a man living in the deadliest era in human history. The US and Japan were locked in a brutal conflict. After years of war across Pacific, the US wanted to end it. First, they gave Japan warnings, but Japan refused to surrender because Japan wanted to dominate Asia and Pacific, seeking resources like oil, rubber, and iron. US wanted Japan to stop expanding, so US cut off all the oil exports from Japan, which Japan relied on US for 80% of its oil and freezing Japanese assets in US. Feeling concerned, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 to cripple the US Navy. This attack unified American public opinion, leading US to declare war on the next day.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
So America dropped the most powerful weapon ever created by mankind, a nuclear bomb. They decided to drop the bomb on a city filled with civilians. Their target were Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Niigata, and Kokura. But for the weather conditions, they chose Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bomb was called Little Boy, but it was no child's weapon. It used uranium-235, a substance that is so radioactive, even just a few kilograms could wipe out a city. The explosion created a fireball. Winds blew at over 1,000 kilometers per hour. Temperature reached 4,000 degrees Celsius. Anyone within a mile was vaporized. And it was the first time in history that mankind tapped into the power of atom, and it became one of the darkest days the world had ever seen.
The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction. It is an atomic bomb. We are now prepared to destroy more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have in any city. We shall destroy their docks, their factories, and their communications.
8:15 a.m. The sky was clear. The city was waking up, mothers making breakfast, children going to school, but they didn't know it was their last day to school. The Enola Gay bomber released its payload.
The Enola Gay's mission starts from Tinian in the Marianas. The crew has had their final briefing on weather and air-sea rescue. Only yesterday they have been told of the true power of the weapon they are to carry.
Everyone just saw a bomb coming from the sky, and then the sky went white. A flash, a shockwave, and silence. Hiroshima people didn't know what happened, and within a seconds, everything got vanished. The Hiroshima was gone. Yamaguchi wasn't a soldier, he was an engineer. He was on last business trip in Hiroshima that day, and that morning he stepped outside and he looked up. He saw a plane and two parachutes, and then the flash. He was less than 3 kilometers from ground zero, and that blast threw him into a field. His entire body burned, but somehow he survived that bomb. Yamaguchi was shocked through a living nightmare. Buildings was destroyed, streets on fire, people wandering with their skin hanging off. But fortunately, Yamaguchi found a shelter. He bandaged his wounds with rags. He watched children cry for parents who no longer existed. He was so lucky to be alive, or so he thought. The next day, Yamaguchi was able to walk. He decided to walk out of Hiroshima, burned, broken, but alive. He made it home to Nagasaki. His co-workers didn't believe his story. A single bomb destroyed a whole city? Impossible. He returned to work and tried to move on, but fate wasn't finished with him. Yamaguchi had survived the nuclear bomb. He saw hell with his own eyes that no human was ever meant to witness, and he thought the worst was behind him. But fate had different plans. Just after 3 days, as he stood in his hometown Nagasaki, trying to warn people about the horror he had seen, but people called him crazy, that how can a single bomb could destroy the whole city? But they were about to find out what the hell he means by that. Another bomb, another flash. The same force that had turned Hiroshima into graveyard had now come for Nagasaki, and he was in the middle of it again, injured and barely recovered. The Nagasaki had not seen this terror in decades. Buildings crumbled in seconds, windows exploded. People who were just living their ordinary lives vanished in a blink of an eye. The fire didn't just destroy the city, it swallowed the air, the hope, and the very idea of safety. Yamaguchi was hit again. 2 bombs and 1 man. It sounds impossible, because it was impossible. But Yamaguchi was still alive, and this time he wasn't just surviving, he was carrying the memory of 2 apocalypse inside his burning skin that really can't even move. When the dust began to settle over Nagasaki, what remained wasn't a city. It became a graveyard where life used to be. And in the middle of it was Yamaguchi, his body scorched and bandaged, his ears deaf from 2 blasts that tore apart the sound itself. He couldn't even move without coughing up the blood. He couldn't move without pain, yet somehow he was still breathing. But this wasn't a survival anymore, this was something else. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it, that blinding white flash. He had lost his friends, colleagues, and his city. The second bomb had fallen, and all that remained was ash. For hours, maybe days, no one knew who had lived. No one knew who had vanished into fire. Soldiers, medics, and strangers shifted through what was left for Nagasaki. Somewhere under the rubble, in a half-collapsed shelter, was Yamaguchi. He was rushed to hospital, where resources were scarce, antibiotics were limited, radiation poisoning was misunderstood. Doctors had no idea how to treat someone who had been inside 2 nuclear hellscapes. Doctors said that he was in nuclear radiation for 83 days, that no human can survive this long in history. Yet, he survived these horrifying events. He saw his wife and child survived. Yamaguchi didn't even survive. He refused to die. The legacy of Tsutomu Yamaguchi lived until 2010, dying of stomach cancer at the age of 93. About 165 people are thought to have survived both atomic blasts, but Yamaguchi is the only person to be officially recognized by the local governments of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He was respected by everyone. His story isn't about survival, it's about what humanity should never survive again. But the real question is, was he the strongest survivor in history or the most unlucky?